Hello, ladies and gentlemen. In the beginning of August this year, and 2 years after the massive cyber attack on the Israeli hospital Hillel Yafe, another Israeli hospital was under attack. This time, it happened in Ma'aneh Yeshua Medical Center near the city of Tel Aviv. The hospital had to shut down its administrative computing systems and stop admitting outpatients until the full recovery of its systems. The result? Outpatients were not being admitted, and patients in need of urgent care were asked to go to nearby hospitals. This is just one example out of several which occurred in Israel, not just in hospitals, but also in governmental websites, Israeli Airlines, Tel Aviv Stock Exchange, Bank of Israel, TV stations, electric, water, and communication firms, and more. Moreover, cyber threats are seen not only on the civil front, but pose also a major concern with regards to military facilities and infrastructures. Just how big is the threat? What is the connection to Israel's national security? And how can Israel improve its cyber offensive and protective capabilities? INSS English podcast. We begin right after this. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining INSS English podcast. I'm Adi Kantor, and it is my pleasure to host in the show today Professor Chuck Freilich, a senior researcher at INSS. Professor Freilich is former Deputy National Security Advisor in Israel and longtime senior fellow at Harvard's Kennedy School, who now teaches at Columbia and Tel Aviv University. He's the author of 3 books on Israeli national security affairs, as well as numerous academic articles, policy studies, and op-eds. The latest book, co-authored by Freilich, together with Mathew Cohen and Gabi Siboni, is titled Israel and the Cyber Threat: How Israel Became a Cyber Superpower. This is the first comprehensive book on the cyber threats Israel faces and national strategy it has developed in response. We will discuss today with Professor Freilich on these issues in depth. Thank you very much, Chuck, for joining me in the show today.
Thank you for having me.
What exactly do we mean when we say cyber? What is cyber? And what is so different and unique about it? And why is it so important to discuss it today?
It's a good question. Most people don't really understand what this whole cyber thing is. It sounds very, very frightening, and there's some reason for it to be so. But in the end, cyber is really just digital code attacking one computer system, attacking another computer system through digital code. People who speak about digital bombs. There's no bomb. There's nothing physical usually happens. But cyber is also, there's a fancy term for it, a substrate, basically the base for all of modern life. In the economic area, in the military area, social, cultural, we're all cyber users. Every one of us as individuals, certainly organizations and firms, corporations around the world, everyone is involved in cyber. We can't live without it. It's hard to remember it wasn't like that a couple of decades ago. Today, we can't live without it. So cyber is a critical area of modern life, civil and national security. And we see that there are actually hundreds of thousands of attacks around the world every day. Most of them are unsophisticated and are easily deflected by the defensive systems, but they're taking place all the time. You mentioned a number where there weren't successes, the hospitals, but we don't hear about most of them. The problem, of course, is those that we do hear about, and the potential for really severe attacks. What's different about cyber, there are a number of things, is first of all, just you can launch an unlimited attack from anywhere in the world instantaneously. Okay, in the past, you could attack 1 target, 2 targets, 10 targets. Today, you can do as many as you want simultaneously and instantaneously. Okay. One of the other differences is that you can cause non-lethal effects. Okay. There's only one known fatality to date from a cyber attack. But you can also cause, if you want, you might be able to cause lethal results. And the third primary difference is a big question because we haven't seen it yet, but it's a source of endless speculation among the cyber experts. Can you cause systemic effects? In other words, for example, can you shut down a country's electric system? And if you do that, you've effectively shut them down. Okay. And if you can do that during a war, maybe you can win the war with hardly firing a shot.
Without sending one soldier.
Right. Okay, so we haven't seen it yet. And the systemic effects are always the next great thing that we're expecting. We thought maybe the Russians would do it in Ukraine. They didn't succeed.
But there were attempts.
There were attempts.
Yeah.
The potential is there.
Okay. Israel 10 years ago became a cyber power. And maybe you can share with our viewers and listeners, how did it happen? Israel really became a world leader in cyber. Can you give us the background to this?
Sure. First of all, there's an incredible story here. I mean, Israel is a country of 9.5 million people. Its population is about the same of New York City. In other words, it's a mid-sized city. That's all by international standards.
We think we are bigger, but we're actually not that big yet.
Well, we think we're a global superpower in general.
Yeah.
But here we really are. And it's remarkable. There's a statistic, I hope you don't fall out of your seat. There's a statistic that the number of cyber startups in Israel equals the total number of cyber startups in the world, except for the United States. So that's Israel equivalent to something like 9 billion people in terms of cyber startups. Right? That's just one of a number of really phenomenal statistics that one can give. How did we do this? Israel's always.
And why was there a need 10 years ago? What was the background?
Well, first of all, 10 years ago, Israel, it started more in the late 90s. But you're right that by 10 years ago, we had become a cyber power. Israel saw in this both a threat to companies that are attacked, of course, a military threat, but also an opportunity.
Yes.
Because cyber seemed to, high tech in general, fits Israel like a glove.
In which way?
First of all, the investments in high tech and cyber, they're not small, but it's not the really big investments that you need in other areas, in other industries. Second of all, what you do need is a bunch of really smart, really creative people.
Yeah, people
and we have
sharp minds.
Sharp minds, and we have them. And there's something else that we happen to have, a lot of chutzpah.
How is it connected to cyber?
This is
interesting.
In the book, we call it chutzpah gone viral.
Interesting.
The idea is, look, Israelis, maybe Jews in general, have a tendency to say no to pretty much everything. No, the laws of physics, they don't apply to me. Okay? No, it's not true that I can't solve this technical problem that way, and I'm going to find another solution.
The disagreement, yes.
It draws on Jewish tradition of Talmudic pilpul, exactly, or a yeshiva student debating a Torah section with his Rav, with his rabbi. Mm-hmm. It's also part of the fact Israel was born out of war, and in the early decades we had very limited resources, so you had to find creative ways to make things happen. Improvisation became an Israeli national trait. It's something we do all the time.
Creativity, yeah.
We improvise too much, but it's also an area of national excellence. And so cyber just fit like a glove for us. There's a military threat. There's an economic capability and opportunity. There's also a military opportunity because we're good at the technological areas of warfare.
The door was open.
The door was open, and we burst through it.
Interesting. I'm, you say, okay, cyber, like high tech generally, made for Israel like a glove. You talked about creativity, the need to think beyond the box, out of the box. When we talk about cyber attack, what does it mean, cyber attack? How do you think beyond the box or out of the box when you want to? In a cyber attack, how does it look like? Because we know how wars look like, but in the cyber world, this is a totally different dimension. Creativity and in the cyber, how is it?
Well, one of the funny things about cyber is that you can actually be under attack without even knowing it.
Yes. Okay.
And
it's a bit scary.
And of course, the digital code can cross countries without their knowing that their territory has been used in support of an attack. Mm-hmm. There are three primary kinds of cyber attack. One is attacks that are designed to either cause damage, physical damage to a computer system, or simply to disrupt it. For example, deface a website, bring it down so it's not in
we've
use.
seen it happen many times on
Lots of
governmental
attacks like
websites.
that. A second area is espionage and intelligence gathering attacks. And a third is the information operations. And maybe the primary example or successful example in that area was the Russian attack on the American elections in 2016 and 2020. And we've also seen attempts, by the way, to attack the Israeli political system, maybe some of the recent elections, and certainly to sow divisive discourse in Israel. That's already happening considerably. So those are the kinds of attacks, and Israel's experienced all of them. You gave a few of the examples in the introduction, but basically I can say there's almost no computer system of any significance in Israel that hasn't been attacked yet. Just about everything.
I'm not sure people know that.
And
pretty much all computers were attacked in one way or the other.
In one way or the other, just about anything worthwhile attacking. My own website was attacked twice, but that's just a different order of importance. But it just shows you how everything is under attack.
Exposed. Yeah.
And Israel set up what's called the National Cyber Directorate, which is responsible for protecting the civil cyber sector. In other words,
just the civil.
Just the civil. In other words, the private, the commercial domain and the public domain. And then the military and the intelligence agencies are responsible for protecting themselves. The National Cyber Directorate, their fundamental assumption, and it's an important one, is that they can't protect everyone because there are thousands and thousands of organizational users and millions of us as individual users.
And so many people who are interested in attacking.
In attacking us. So the idea is that they do provide a specially tailored package for what's called critical infrastructure organizations, the power company, the water company, communications firms. And
hospitals?
I think hospitals have now been added or in the process of being added. They weren't in the original list because if you attack a hospital, then you've attacked a hospital. You haven't brought down the entire medical system. If you attack a power station, you can bring down the entire
hospital. Of course.
Okay. But they've now got a good few dozen firms that have been defined as critical infrastructure. And they are responsible in effect for their defense. Or the organization does it itself, but they're deeply involved. They provide them with the defensive package. Then for everybody else, they provide, you can go onto their website, they provide guidance and regulations, binding regulations, what everyone else is supposed to do. For example, one of the things that they have is sort of a checklist so you can figure out if you're really a high priority, you're a big target or you're not such a big target, and what you should do accordingly. So for the critical national infrastructures, they provide the package. For everybody else, they provide the guidance and the regulations telling us what to do.
When we try to map the threats Israel is exposed to, without saying too much, but for example, Iran, or maybe you can mention other examples, how much should Israel be concerned from external cyber attack?
Well, we should be deeply concerned because Iran, especially, Iran, Hezbollah, Hamas, but mostly Iran is attacking us continually. Iran, by the way, got into the cyber game late, largely in response to the 2010 Stuxnet attack, which was an attack attributed to the U.S. and Israel, which sabotaged the Iranian nuclear program, put it off maybe by about a year. That was the big wake-up call for them. And since then, they've gotten into the area. Today, they're considered probably at the top of the second tier of cyber actors. Most of the attacks that we've seen that they've conducted, Hezbollah, Hamas, have not been very sophisticated to date. And they seem to, I'm talking now about the civil sector. We only know a little bit about what they've done against military targets. There, maybe it's been a little more sophisticated. And I imagine what we don't know about is more sophisticated. Really, they've gone after the low-hanging fruit, so to speak, companies and ministries that have not protected themselves sufficiently, that maybe didn't live up to the guidelines that the National Cyber Directorate had set. And so we saw, for example, one of the most damaging attacks was 2 or 3 years ago. An insurance company that covers, they specialize in covering people from the defense establishment as a whole, IDF, Mossad, Shin Bet, and others. And this was both an espionage attack and an information attack. And they got the names from the insurance company. They dumped them all on the internet, people's names, home addresses, email addresses, car licenses, medical histories, just all sorts of information that is simply a bonanza for foreign intelligence agencies. That was one of the big failures. And it was just because of a company that did not, this one really did not fulfill
itself.
the guidelines.
Yes.
Yeah, didn't protect itself. Yeah.
This is very, very alarming. We talked about the attack itself, the threats. Now let's talk a bit about the responses. What can be a response? The offensive cyber. How can we protect ourselves? How can Israel protect itself, the systems, infrastructures, from an attack like this?
Well,
what can be said about the offensive perspective?
Right. So the defensive side we talked about.
Or the offensive, yeah.
Right. In other words, the National Cyber Directorate protecting the civil sector. And we know that, for example, this is open information. The IDF has a cyber defense brigade, an entire brigade as part of the general staff of the what's called the C4I branch. Okay. We also know that within the IDF, 8200, which is Israel's an intelligence unit, which is Israel's version of the American NSA, National Security Administration, the Signals Intelligence Agency. Today, it's actually mostly a cyber intelligence agency. Mm-hmm. They're responsible both for cyber collection. Actually, most intelligence collection today is done by cyber. And they're responsible for the offensive side. Mm-hmm. How they do it,
sure,
obviously,
we'll
leave it to them.
Yes. So when you think about where Israel is headed with regards to cyber abilities, I mean, we cannot discuss this, of course, and we both don't know, but where I don't know, in 5 years from now or 10 years from now, where do you see Israel stands in terms of cyber abilities? And next wars are going to be through computers?
Well, it would be nice if they were only through computers, but unfortunately they won't be. I think cyber will be a part of any future, any major confrontation in the future.
Already now, yeah. It is already now.
But it'll play a bigger role for us. We look, during the previous rounds, let's say with Hamas and PIJ, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, in recent years, we've seen some cyber attacks. It wasn't a big thing yet, but it's going to be, especially from Iran and maybe Hezbollah, because they're probably more sophisticated than Hamas. We'll see it, and I think we'll use it, both at the strategic level and the tactical level.
Where do you see this? Where are the points you see, and I'm sure that you refer to this also in your book, that Israel needs to improve with regards to abilities, or where should be a bit more thought about this?
Well, we talked before about chutzpah, so I'll say that if people want to know what we should do, the recommendations, should read the book.
Yes, for sure.
But to give you one or two areas, first of all, the current judicial reform process, or whatever you want to call it, is clearly having a very harmful impact on the cyber sector.
In which way?
People are afraid to invest in Israel, or don't want to invest in a country whose future is unclear to them, whose democratic future is unclear to them. The impact is already considerable, and if things continue, then it will be really significant. That's the downside that I can see. On the upside, if we get past this, then I think the Israel cyber sector will continue to flourish. It's already a
significant... The minds that you referred to before are maybe thinking twice if to stay or to leave, or the whole subject of relocation, yeah. Mm-hmm. High-tech and relocation.
Yeah, and I mean, young people, especially in Israel, are very light on their feet, and Google and Facebook and the other companies are looking for them, willing to pay them untold sums, especially
what kept them until now here is their love for this country.
That's right. Yeah. So that's a real bummer, so to speak. I think another area where we have to do more, this isn't cyber, but this is related, is in the AI area, where unlike cyber, where we were a world leader and we were ahead of most of the world, here we wanted to be, and at one point a few years ago we might have been, and it's not just a judicial reform, but the entire political crisis, the 5 rounds of elections in the last sort of 4 or 5 years, diverted attention from this. So, for example, Prime Minister Netanyahu, who really gets a lot of credit for the cyber revolution because he led it, he woke up to it early, or the IDF woke him up to it. He hasn't provided that leadership on AI. And today, we're behind the rest of the world, or at least the other leading countries.
Chuck, I really want to thank you for enlightening us on these, for me, I think, very interesting, not just interesting, but really vital to know how cyber is plays such a big role in our lives and for our security, of course, and the security of the State of Israel. And I really want to thank you for sharing the essence of the book that you've written with us, with the viewers, with our listeners. And I'm sure that this is just the first program on this. We will definitely call you for another show, another podcast on this. Thank you so much.
Looking forward to it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and thank you for our viewers and listeners. See you next time.